Good evening. They have the reputation of being the most determined of fighters, but today former Gurkha soldiers based in the south have been forced to accept defeat over their pension rights. At the moment, only Gurkha soldiers who retired after July 1997 are eligible for the same pension as their British counterparts. Mel Bloor reports.
For 20 years, Gunraj Rai fought in the British Army all over the world. But the pension he receives is a fraction of his British equivalents. Some say that's discrimination. The European Court of Human Rights disagrees.
Even the enemies, our enemies have treated us equally. Can I give you an example? During 1835, King of Delhi wanted to give 10 rupees each to British or Gorkha head. Once we fought for our friends, the way they treated us is really saddened. It's shameful.
In 2013, Mr. Rai was willing to put his life on the line for his cause when he went on hunger strike. He called it off when MPs agreed to hold an inquiry. Actress and Gurkha campaigner Joanna Lumley presented him with a glass of fruit juice.
Namaste.
In 2009, Gurkha soldiers who'd served for more than 4 years were granted the right to settle in the UK. The borough of Rushmore in Hampshire is now home to around 10,000 people of Nepalese descent. And earlier this year, Aldershot's Gurkha regiments were granted the freedom of the borough for their contribution to the community. But soldiers who retired before 1997 receive only a third of a normal pension, leaving many reliant on benefits.
If you go to the vegetable market on Friday, they buy normally the cheap food, rotten foods. How sad thing is this in 21st century?
Here again we've got a situation where very brave British Army soldiers are being shortchanged, and I think most people in Britain would agree you should never shortchange people who have been heroes for your country. It's a very sad day and another setback.
Despite today's ruling, Gunraj Rai says he will continue his fight for equal pensions for his fellow Gurkha veterans, with another hunger strike planned for November. Mel Bloor, ITV News.
2 teenagers have been questioned by police after a digger caught fire in a car park in Poole. People living near the Dolphin Shopping Centre reported hearing explosions on Tuesday night. The 13-year-old boys have been released while investigations continue. Energy experts in the south have criticised the government's decision to approve Britain's first new nuclear power plant in 20 years. The Hinkley Point power station in Somerset will cost £18 billion. Academics at the University of Sussex believe the money should be spent on renewable energy instead.
Well, this decision defies logic in terms of economics and efficacy. The government's own data and important commissioned reports, for example by the National Audit Commission, show that alternative low-carbon pathways are cheaper and more buildable.
Last month's Brighton Pride raised £100,000 for local charities. 300,000 people joined in with the celebrations last month. Pride has now raised more than £300,000 over the past 4 years. Condition that's responsible for the premature death of hundreds of people every year. But now people living with high blood pressure are being offered a life-saving procedure, and one woman from the south has become the first in the country to undergo it. Here's Richard Slee.
Julie Wanstall has suffered from extreme high blood pressure for most of her life. She's one of millions of people in the UK who are living with hypertension. She's tried many different treatments, but none have worked, until now. In a few hours, she'll become the first patient in the UK to receive Barostim therapy. Julie was 19 and working as a nurse when she discovered she had extremely high blood pressure, but eventually the drug stopped working. Her active lifestyle suffered, and she had to give up work as her condition got worse.
My normal is about 220, up to 300, where a normal person's BP is anything around 120. And I've had a couple of strokes through my high blood pressure, so things are incredibly difficult.
Julie was so desperate to have this procedure that she even considered moving to Germany, where many patients receive this treatment every week. She's now being prepared to receive a device called the Barostim Neo.
Pulse device sits just in the chest wall here. The lead takes the electrode up into the neck to the vessel which essentially controls or carries the clockwork for controlling blood pressure. Electrical impulses run from there to the brain, and that helps to therefore ultimately reduce blood pressure.
It takes about an hour to do this procedure, and the results should last a lifetime. But just as important is the improvement in the quality of life for the patient. 3 weeks after the device was fitted, Julie is about to have the power turned up to see how low her blood pressure can go. Watching the effect is Julie's consultant, who's delighted with these initial results.
Importantly, she's not taking any blood pressure control, we're just using the device alone. So as far as things go in terms of clinical progress, this is about as encouraging as it could get.
Over the next few months, the therapy will be fine-tuned with the aim of reducing Julie's blood pressure even further.
I couldn't run, I was out of breath, I couldn't handle my horses very well, couldn't walk the dog, and now I feel wonderful.
Julie is now on a new, healthier journey back to normality, and it's hoped that soon many more patients in the UK will also benefit from this therapy. Richard Slee, ITV News.
It was exactly 100 years ago today when a terrifying and formidable new weapon appeared on the battlefield of the Somme. It was the tank. This weekend, special events at the Tank Museum in Dorset are marking the centenary. Our correspondent Martin Dowse visited the fields in France where that first action took place.
Britain's new secret weapon arrived on the Somme in September 1916, disguised in transit as a delivery of water tanks. The decoy name stuck. At dawn on the 15th of September, 32 tanks formed up along the British lines in this area. Of those, though, only 25 then successfully moved off towards the German trenches. Commanding the first ever tank into action was 25-year-old Harold Mortimer, with just a few months' training behind him. In another tank was 23-year-old Cyril Coles, a corn miller from Dorset before joining up. He'd also had very little training. This was an experiment. The battlefield was the laboratory. Mortimer, Coles and their comrades were the guinea pigs.
Their mission was literally to clear these trenches, which are in a sort of zigzag format, of the German machine gunners. When his tank appeared at this trench, the German soldiers, just as a man, they dropped their guns and they ran.
Leading out in front, Mortimer's tank attacked German positions here on the eastern edge of these woods. But it was soon hit by shell fire, possibly German, possibly British, and the crew had to bail out and try and make their way back across no man's land.
The crew escape and they make it back to the front line. So Mortimer survives the day, and in the end he comes back to Bovington to actually train further tank crews. He survives the war. We learn a lot of lessons, we go away, we improve. The following year at the Battle of Cambrai, they use over 300 tanks in a much better planned and thought through operation. It cuts a 3-mile wide hole in the German front line, 3 miles deep, a great success. And they actually ring the church bells back in England. This is the first time we've got that sort of a victory. So the tank has its day.
Martin Dowse, ITV News.
Now on to sport, and it was an historic night for Southampton Football Club. Playing their first Europa League group match, the game finished 3-0 with 2 goals from Charlie Austin and a last-minute goal from Jay Rodriguez. And the highlights of the match are on ITV straight after this bulletin. Very well done to the Saints. Let's take a look at the weather now with all the details tonight. Here he is, it's Simon.
From sleet to the slopes, driving through Europe. Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Good evening, and brace yourself for a change in the weather that means things will be a good deal wetter and colder than we've been used to. Certainly some quite hefty showers knocking around this evening so far. A dry spell, but through the early hours from the west